This is a Tad Media special report with author and pastor Chris Maxwell. Chris is joining us to chat about two of his latest books, as well as some other opportunities he's had in front of him. And we're excited to hear a little bit more about what's going on in your life. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm honored to participate in this and have another conversation with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just met Chris recently, and it's been so much fun getting to know him and learning more about his story, and it's pretty incredible. So we'll tell you more about that as we get into our conversation today. But just a quick glimpse: Chris is a pastor. He is an author. What 12 books? Is that right? 12
Yes.
books. A campus pastor. Oh
Yeah.
goodness, what else? Pharmaceutical sales or a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah. I pastored a church in Orlando, Florida for 20 years, and then summer of 2006, I accepted the position at Emmanuel University to be the campus pastor and director of spiritual life. So, yeah, and now I'm pastoring a local church again on the side and enjoying.
Aw. And so my joke has been, okay, we could just list all of these things that Chris is doing, and his most recent book out is called Equilibrium: How to
Mhm.
Balance something something. What when the
31 ways to stay balanced in life's uneven surfaces.
so I have to pick on him about he's writing about that, but yet he seems to be
A
super.
hypocrite, writing about something I'm not really living well.
Right, right, right. So tell us how you're bringing those two together.
Yeah, Jennifer, that's a good question. All of my books are personal in one way or another. It's what I'm going through personally and how I'm dealing with that. And several years ago, I felt like my word for the year was balance. How to find balance in the chaos. We're going through so much chaos that living in a world of uneven surfaces. And I'd written a poem about uneven surfaces when I was walking onto a plane, right before I was boarding the plane, the sign said, "Caution, uneven surfaces." As you're walking right to get
Right,
on the
right.
plane.
I've seen this.
So I sat down on the plane, wrote a poem about it, had it in one of my books of poetry. But I realized that's where I'm living. That's where so many people are living, and the people that I'm counseling, the people that I'm mentoring and spending time with, their lives are so uneven. And I just had a sense that personally I needed to balance that better than I had before. And so, yeah, it was just a personal thing. And then it turned into kind of a list of ways that I can find balance. And so that personal application turned into the topics that I would teach, and that turned into a book. Yeah. And so, a better word than balance for a book title is equilibrium. And so that kind of got attention, and people like that. Oh, I've never really thought about it that way. And yeah, so and everything is odd. The number of chapter titles, 31. It's an odd number because
Good, yes.
life is odd. It's not just even and simple and smooth. There are so many twists and turns, and some of the turns are very sharp, and the surfaces are uneven. Life is not simple, and it hasn't been for me, and it hasn't been for the people that I know and love and serve. So, how can we take these uneven surfaces but find intentional, practical ways of being balanced in biblical truth and practical applications?
And do you give examples that would resonate with anyone that might be reading it? Everyday
Yeah,
life,
I
or do
mean,
you do more? Is it more um, philosophical?
no, it's not. I mean, I teach at a university, but I'm not academically brilliant. I love the academic angle, but I mean, it needs to be the language of today's people, and that's stories. I write a lot of poetry, but I love writing stories, telling stories, and I did not want it to be just the preacher that I am preaching a sermon in words with nouns and verbs, pointing a finger at those whose eyes are open, trying to read this, because the words for the ears are different than the words for the eyes sometimes.
Right.
Uh, and so it's story, it's confession, it's honest, it's raw, it is poetic in pace and rhythm, but it's story based. And even the first two chapters, I mean, really, the first two chapters summarize these are goals in life that are not easy, but they are the right way to find balance.
Mm. Well, I'm definitely going to have to read this. I'm excited to hear that. Do you use any of the experiences you have with your with at the university with the students? Does that feed into any of the work that
Yeah,
you
it really does. I mean, and I use a lot of the stories I learned from students. It's so great working with this generation, because you can learn from them. Like
Yeah.
right here in the office where you see me on our call, this is where I have conversations with students, and I hear, Jennifer, I hear about their pain, I hear about their sadness, their grief, their wounds. I hear about their uneven surfaces. And part of my role as the one who will listen and offer pastoral care and counseling is to help them find balance. And then I teach spiritual formation. That's one of the classes that I teach. I also teach that in retreats and seminars around the country. And I love that because I give them like this ongoing invitation to come and spend time with your creator. And he's the one who can help us find that peace amid the chaos,
Mhm.
that calmness right in the middle of the storm. Sometimes the storms are not calmed for us.
Right.
The storms just keep going full speed, nonstop. But there is a calmness internally that can come as we find our personal equilibrium.
Mm. That's so good. Now, all the years you've been on the campus, are the situations similar student to year to year to year, student to student, or are they do they change with the seasons with the
That's a good question. Since I said yeah, and it was hard to leave Orlando. You know, I was pastoring that church. My wife and I loved it. We pastored there for 20 years. Those people had been so good to us. But isn't it nice to say goodbye and everybody's sad you're leaving instead of glad to see
Yes,
you go?
that
So
is my goal too.
yeah, it's like, oh, they were sad, we were sad, but it was like healthy tears.
Mhm.
And
Not the
me,
where they're going, oh, when.
yeah, we've been praying for this. And this is the answer to our prayers. Um, so the transition was hard, but working with the students when I first came, the stories were real and deep and hurt, just a lot of hurt that they were facing and dealing with. But since then, it's almost been like three different tribes or three different colleges. In the 18 years that I've been here, it's changed that much. And the most recent one, those that have experienced the COVID season and without being in school or being around people for that season, and now amid all the chaos, the political, the religious chaos. Jennifer, to be honest, so many of them, their closest friends are people they never meet in person. They know them through social media, through the world of text. And here I am writing a chapter about don't do life alone. And I talk to them about relationships and how to deal with past hurt, how no longer to be controlled by those pains from your past. Identify the hurt. And so, yeah, I believe that being able to learn from the students who are here to learn. I'm learning from them about the impact that this has had on our culture. I speak often to groups of pastors who really do not understand that. And they think, well, just because I've always done it this way, I must continue doing it this way. Well, you can do it that way, but realize they will not hear what you are saying. um,
Yeah.
make sure that you hear those that to whom you are speaking before you expect them to hear from you.
Oh, talking about COVID and the students that have come through that phase,
Mhm.
is it an extreme difference, the students who are
Yeah,
post-COVID versus pre-COVID?
it really is. They're accustomed to aloneness, um, and deep, honest conversations, face to face, in person,
Mhm.
are just kind of this strange, odd entity for them, and just helping develop relationships. Um, but also in addition to that, that being one of the main issues, many of the students now are so deeply wounded from a variety of hurts, family life, personal issues, a high percentage on various medications, emotionally related, physically related, just so many things. And I just feel like my job is to almost like be the balance that they need,
Yeah.
display a life of equilibrium because nothing in their life seems balanced. Medically, mentally, emotionally, conversationally, even how to have a balanced conversation, to sit beside someone, learning about eye contact, learning about tone of voice, and helping guide them through life in the plural instead of life in the singular, because so much during COVID and post COVID, and now in this high tech world, it's life in the singular, and that is not a healthy life. That's not life in the kingdom. So I'm helping them, hoping to help them meet the importance of high touch in this world of high tech and balance those out.
That's good. That's good. Do you have any advice for churches and maybe even parents? I don't know, families, anyone who maybe can see this as well, but they don't really know what steps to take or how to approach the subject or how to engage.
Yeah, that's another good question. I believe including a professional counselor in decisions that we make is healthy. Uh, we often sit together with the visionary people and the practical application people without understanding the scars. Let's visit someone who knows more of the scars, so we can actually have a better grasp of who it is that we talk to, who it is that we are to listen, and understand better. Yeah, that would be my advice. And just be let's remember we have two eyes and two ears and one mouth. Maybe we need to talk less and listen better. Ask open-ended questions and just sit and listen over time.
Mm, that's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, we tend to want to get our all of our info out and keep
Yeah.
moving. That's good.
Hmm.
All right, so Equilibrium can be found on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
That book. And so
Yeah.
your next book is almost ready. It'll be out soon.
Yeah.
Things we've handed down.
Yeah.
So
Things
tell
we've
us,
handed down.
yeah, tell us about that and how you got there and what we can expect.
Yeah. Well, this is my 12th book. I've been editor and ghostwriter of over 40 books, so I've had a lot of pages, a lot of nouns and verbs and sentences over the years. But I wrote, to be totally honest with you, Jennifer, I wrote this book as if it was my last book,
Yeah.
hoping it isn't. But if it is, what do I want to say to this generation we're talking about? What do I want to say to them? And I wanted to say it in a different way. I didn't want to say it the same way I said it in Equilibrium. And I wanted to take the books which have impacted my life the most. That's what I want to hand down to them. I want to take books, pages, stories, pain, scars, answers, but many questions. I wanted to take those books and say, read this book, but without saying it that way. I want to say, I love this book, you've got to read it. But I know not to, make that type of statement. So each chapter is 12 chapters about 12 books that have impacted my life the most. But I cheated because the introduction and the conclusion are also about books. Um,
Oh, so you got a
so
little
it's
more in
kind of
there.
14, but 12. But each one is the title. Each chapter title is the title of a book, which has impacted my life the most, or in specific ways that I believe can touch this younger generation. And the style um, I wrote each chapter as a letter, dear friend, dear
Oh,
friend. And I'm thinking about that student. I'm thinking about that young leader on a staff at a local church. She has this incredible position, and I'm writing about chapter one is based upon the book, Philip Yancey's book, Disappointment with God. It impacted my life on how to deal with disappointment. I'm writing to her because her mom committed suicide. I'm writing, I mean, it's like I've had 5 suicides of friends during the time I'm writing this book.
mm,
So disappointment with God, yeah, that's where I'm starting. I talk to my editor friends and the publisher's like, no, we are not going to start with just a happy smile. Let's go there. Let's start with the scars and the wounds instead of being too smooth in the beginning. And so chapter one, disappointment with God. My argument is the best way to deal with disappointment with God is with God.
mm,
Face the disappointment, but face that disappointment with His grace all around us, knowing we can be honest and blunt disappointment at God, toward God, with God, about life, things, stuff, but deal with the disappointment with God and not alone. Yeah, so that's I give you a quick summary of
That's
chapter
good.
one
Yeah.
and the things we've handed down.
That's good. And I was excited to know that you used a little bit of research from the Baptist paper, our publication through Tab Media Group. And so that was kind of
Yes.
fun to discover.
Well, it was so fun when I was reading that article. I'm like, this is like just what I needed. And so I was reading and I was looking through the research that you and your team did, and you provided um, uh, important and needed information, but also some scary information. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is what's needed. If we're not aware of this, we're not going to be capable of helping people find their equilibrium. And I'm like, oh, these are this bits of information that can be passed on to my readers. And so writing each chapter as a letter, it's like so I'm passing along the information you passed on to me. I'm passing it on to them. I'm like, this is vital for the generations to know about the scars and the wounds and the tears and what people are facing. And where is church in this? Where is God in this?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, so many people turn away from God or just angry toward God
Right.
instead of like, okay, I am angry, I am disappointed, now I need him the most, instead of need to be as far away from him as possible. So I wanted to just kind of build a bridge so that they could walk into this place realizing God is already with them, whether they realize it or not, but to grasp it in a new and fresh way.
Mhm. Yeah, I do like I like the angles you're taking because so many times we try to give a perception that as a believer and a strong fit, someone with a strong faith, we can't be disappointed. We have to just always be almost in a toxic positivity kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so that's so good that you can pull that together and outline that.
Hmm.
And that series we did was the Endangered Youth series. And again, just here and there, we try to drop in just some realistic numbers and stats and information and concepts so that our church people can you know be aware and not
Yeah.
get not miss out on what's happening right there in the pews around them, and they can get so focused on just the routines of church life they can miss it. So
Well, you're so right, and we do not need to live in a world of fiction and call it
right.
faith. Let's live in this nonfiction world of scars and wounds and pain, and realize we've been handed some things down to us. We've been handed some things down to us that are not always pleasant or joyful. Let's be aware of what we've been handed down, and if we deal with that properly and deal in a healthy way with our own disappointment and spend time just with God, with the wounds and the scars, then we can become better at what to hand down to the future leaders, servants, the people who are part of our lives. Yeah. So disappointment with God, we started there. And the
Mhm.
next chapter, the next two chapters actually just sort of kept that mood going.
Okay.
Wounds are where light enters, and the wounded healer. Those are chapters 2 and 3. So you can see that common word there, wounds.
Right.
And you know about wounds. I know about wounds. The audiences know about wounds. Our pastors, our leaders know about wounds. Everybody, everywhere, they know about. Yeah, we just haven't. I don't think we've learned good ways to deal with our wounds.
Right. Well, speaking of that, you do have a story connected to some wounds, and I know that our listeners will want to hear a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what you've walked
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I was pastoring the church in Orlando, I was like very healthy. I mean, I was coaching our three sons in basketball and baseball. I was writing curriculum, scholarly, deep
through.
theological material for denomination devotions, writing book reviews, music reviews. I had a great memory by that time. I don't mind saying that because I'm not that same person
Mhm.
anymore. But it's like everybody I met, I could remember their number, their name. Just it was so easy for me. But in an unexpected season, I became very sick. I was always healthy, but that changed quickly, drastically. And my wife did not know what was wrong with me. I was communicating, not making much sense Sometimes as pastors, we may do that, but this was very different. It wasn't making any sense at all in the house. And I was passing out, falling to the floor. She took me to a doctor. He did not know what was going on, brought me home. I continued getting worse. And she took me to the emergency room, and they did not know if I would live. Healthy Chris, everything changed drastically. Debbie thought she would just take me home. They would find out a problem, come home, all would be well. She did not know that when I eventually did come home, I would be a very different man than the husband she took to the hospital. Um, so I was at that time dying. They were able to detect the cause. I was battling encephalitis, and was damaging my brain. I was battling encephalitis. It was damaging my brain. And they finally determined if he does live, he will never be able to communicate again. He will not be able to talk or write. That's what I did. I was a speaker and a writer and a pastor. And here I am in the hospital, not remembering the names of our three sons. Here I am in the hospital, not able to communicate. And again, that was March of 1996. And now everybody sees me. I mean, you've met me at a convention. People hear me speak. They see me on TV, on radio, on the internet. Oh, you're better now. No, I have learned how to deal with a life of scars. I have severe scar tissue in the left temporal lobe of my brain, and I live with epilepsy now. And it's interesting how those deep mental and emotional scars are a part of every story. Sometimes my friends will say, "Are you going to write about epilepsy this time?" And every time I write, it is in some way affected by,
Connected somewhere.
influenced by, or related to living life with epilepsy. So I've traveled around the world and spoken for a pharmaceutical company, trying to give hope to those who live without hope, epilepsy and other mental issues. And some of the question you asked me earlier, Jennifer, this all fits here, because I have to pay close attention to those I'm talking to. My method of learning is different, but honestly, that type of listener and learner is the type of leader we need to be, because I'm going to sit with a student and pay full attention. I'm not going to multitask. We think we are, but mentally we're not really, even when we're trying to. But I pay full attention and listen well, because my scar tissue is very severe. Neurologists and epileptologists look at my scar tissue and they can't believe I'm the same man they just heard speak at this convention, or the one that wrote the book they read. I should not be able to do that. So even though I'm living with epilepsy, I'm on medication, I have to see a neurologist, I have some very strong boundaries in my lifestyle that I have to live, God is still able to do wild and good and crazy things. It's like his strength really is made perfect where, and not on our personality profile or our spiritual gift list, in our weakness. His strength is able to show off there in those places. And yeah, so I've written about that. I write about it a little bit in Equilibrium and in Things We've Handed Down, because I'm handing down wounds, and I'm able to identify with those who are hurting, not because I learned an important theological lesson or preached this powerful sermon. No, because I know what it's like to trip and to stumble mentally. In one of the TV shows, not long after my illness, my wife called me her second husband. Same name, but very different personality. So Debbie was affected by it. Each of our three sons, now I can remember their names, Taylor, Aaron, and Graham. They were affected by it. And now each of our three sons are married. And so Debbie and I have 9 grandchildren, and I work hard to remember their names, but I love my time with them. And one of my editors, you'll like this, one of the editors that I wrote for before the illness, and then as I was able, I had to learn to read and write again. That was so hard. I think that's why I love this book so much, Things We've Handed Down, because I value words. I see the importance of every story. It's like the books here in my office that you can see through our Zoom call. The books in here are of value to me. This is like each one's a prize. It's a treasure. I do not want to push them aside. And I respected words before. I loved books before, But now, because I had to rewire the neurological system and learn how to read and write again, I respect it more before. But what I was getting ready to mention, one of my editors that I wrote for before the illness, and then he gave me my first assignment after the illness as I was learning to write again. He said, Chris the scholar became Chris the poet.
Oh, wow.
And I've always loved poetry, but now it's like my first draft of everything is poetic because my left temporal lobe, the logical thinker is gone, but everything is a poem. And I realize life is more like that. It is uneven surfaces.
Mhm.
And it's what I want to hand down. It's a poem. It's not just the simple and the easy and follow these steps. It's like, wow, be careful where you step because it's sharp, it twists, it's not easy, it's not simple. Ministry is not simple. Life is not simple. There's pain, there's wounds, there's scars. That's the surface that we're walking on. And that's why I want to hand down lessons I've learned through books to those wherever their scars are. Their scar may not be left temporal lobe. It may be scar in the heart, scar in the family, those who've been abused and wounded for so many reasons. The effects are sad stories, but in the middle of the sadness, there's some holy gladness that God can bring in unexpected ways. And books can do that if we read the right books. And I hope this book, kind of written in this style of letters to others, are things we've handed down. 12 letters I leave for you. Yeah,
Mm. Wow. Well, I definitely look forward to reading those, and I hope it's not your last book. I hope you get to write more, but
yeah,
yeah, I can understand what you're saying about the more how you treasure now some of the things we've so many times taken for granted, and
right.
I love that,
Yeah,
and I hope we all can be challenged by that. That's good.
yeah, I hope
All
so.
right, so things we've handed down comes out in October.
October 1, October
October.
1st.
Okay,
Yeah, October
and
1st.
we can learn more. Let's see, you have a podcast, I believe, that we can
Yeah, yeah, and
expand a
it'll all
bit.
be it'll be all on my website, chrismaxwell.me, and the
Okay.
podcast is Next Step Leaders. It's just a fun, just great conversations that Tracy Reynolds, he's a friend of mine, so we're co-host of that Next Step Leadership podcast, and it comes out every Thursday.
Okay. And then the web address is chrismaxwell.me, right?
chrismaxwell.me.
Okay.
Even I can remember that, so
I
that's
love it.
that's
That was a great
convenient.
that was a great idea. All right. Well, Chris, thank you. Thanks for sharing with us. We appreciate and love hearing about your story.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the positive difference you are, and all that you're doing. You're bringing hope through words and stories to many people, and you're making a positive difference. So, thank you very much.
We appreciate that.